in this state and beyond. With that, let me introduce to the stage our first Echo Talker, Ruth Dubin. Ruth?
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, I'm a family physician from Kingston, Ontario. And today I want to talk about how chance can change the world. Kingston is a small city at the eastern end of Lake Ontario. And some of you may be familiar with our old Fort Henry, which was built to protect us from an invasion by the Americans during the War of 1812. So far, it still seems to be working. Those of you who like hockey may also be familiar with our uncharacteristically flamboyant, for a Canadian, Don Cherry from Hockey Night in Canada and Coach's Corner. He lives in Kingston. But I want to talk to you today about my patient, Martin. Martin arrived in my office in the late 1980s. He was a refugee from civil war in Central America. He'd been referred to me because of my over-exaggerated ability to speak, or a reputation for being able to speak Spanish. Martin worked really hard to settle into life in Canada. He immediately got a job as a dishwasher. He worked very hard, he learned English, he eventually bought a home, and he rose to become manager at his restaurant. He was quite rightly proud of his accomplishments. Then he had a back injury at work, and usual care, usual rehab, he went back to work. A second back injury took longer for Martin to heal. We used some medication, some physiotherapy. He persisted and he went back to the job. But a third back injury left Martin in severe chronic pain. We tried everything, all the pills, the referrals, the physio, a back brace. Martin even drove 2 hours each way to Ottawa to get needles in his spine so that he could return to his job. And he did go back to work on modified duties. But one day, his boss saw him taking his pills so that he could get through his shift, and his boss fired Martin. The next day, Martin was in my office in tears. And for me to see this strong, proud man weep, all I could think was, everything we've done, the entire medical model has failed Martin. Then I remembered that I had hurt my back 10 years earlier digging out after a snowstorm. And the next day, I had turned and felt a searing pain in my low back going down my leg to my toes. It was sciatica. So I hobbled out of my office, down the hall to the physiotherapy clinic next door. And the physiotherapist gave me a book of exercises and told me to stay active. So I never missed an aerobics class. And over the years, my back pain gradually settled and really hardly bothers me at all anymore. So I wondered if exercise might help Martin. So I called the Kingston YMCA and asked if they might like to develop an exercise program for people living with chronic pain. And they said yes. So a little while later, I was at a pain education conference for healthcare providers in Kingston, and I stood up and told people Martin's story. I asked if anybody would like to help. So I went round at the break from table to table, and I signed people up. I got a nurse, a physiotherapist, a psychologist, and an exercise researcher. But I will never forget the doctor who said to me, "Ruth, it will never work." Because she was wrong. We were able to show that our patients who participated in the program had improved quality of life, and that they were as disabled functionally as patients with end-stage chronic kidney disease. We took our information to the Canadian Pain Society as a poster, and that is where I learned a most shocking fact. In Canada, veterinarians get 5 times more pain education than do physicians. Veterinarians get about 87 hours on average. Medical students, 16 hours. And at my institution, the numbers are much lower than that. Moreover, family physicians who manage the great bulk of people living with chronic pain get less than 4 hours of pain management training. And this is for a condition that afflicts 1 in 5 Canadians, pain being the main reason why people go to see the doctor. So it's no wonder that Albuquerque's own Mike from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul went to see a veterinarian to get a bullet taken out of his shoulder. Thank you. Yeah. So here's where luck really comes into the equation. In 2012, I was at a pain conference in the United States, and I literally walked past a talk that was being given on something called Project Echo Chronic Pain and Headache Clinic. That is how close I came to missing Project Echo. Fortunately, Echo had a booth at the conference, and I stopped and talked to them, and within 5 minutes, I was sold on the model. So a few months later, I flew down to Albuquerque, and I sat in on the Rheumatology Echo. I saw primary care providers from throughout the state assessing, diagnosing, and managing their patients with inflammatory arthritis within a week of having seen them. And they were using potent and potentially dangerous disease-modifying drugs, which I, as a family physician, would never have had the skills to use. In Canada, I felt lucky if my patients only waited 6 months to see a rheumatologist, by which point their joints would already have suffered irreparable damage. So I flew back to Canada, and I told everybody I met about Project Echo. Most people just shrugged. But not my Echo co-chair, Dr. Andrea Ferland. I know she's here somewhere. Andrea got it right away, and she said, let's do it. And Dr. Gary Salisbury from the Ministry of Health, he also got it. In April of 2014, funding for Echo Ontario Chronic Pain was announced by our then Minister of Health. And since then, we've reached over 300 healthcare providers throughout the province of Ontario. And some of them have gone on to develop some really creative pain clinics and interventions for their home communities. Then in the fall of 2015, our second Echo, Mental Health and Addictions, took flight. There are so many people to thank for these successes. But personally, I had to tell Martin himself that if it weren't for him, I would not be here today. And Martin is so proud to be sharing his story with everyone. Dr. Aurora says, or has said, that Echo just came to him as an idea. But it was an idea which he shares and shared with anyone and everyone who wanted to know more. So, can chance change the world? Each one of you who's sitting here today is proof that chance can and will change the world.